Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's another episode of the Thursday Show. Let's talk Broncos, Thursday edition. I'm sitting here again with my main man, Frankie Abbott. Frankie, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing excellent, Joey. You know I'm always hyped to be here. It's another Thursday, and we're still on a win streak, baby. We're still on a win streak. How about yourself?
Dude, I'm doing good. We are on the win streak, and it's unbelievable from where we started at the beginning of the season. I'm not even sure what to make of it completely. Like, if I'm being honest, all of it is so like my brain is going like 1,000 miles an hour. Like, sorry, 1 second. I was trying to get the YouTube shared on Twitter. It's insane. Like, I was the front runner of the Broncos should tank person. I really was. I was all over the place saying the Broncos should tank, the Broncos should tank, the Broncos should tank. Man, I still think it was pretty unlikely to get here. But I have to say, I feel like I was wrong. The Broncos are in prime position to go after the playoffs right now. And if you're able to do that, that's what you focus on. It's playoffs. So, hey, you know what? I'm happy. I'm ready to roll, man. I'm so excited.
100%, dude. We're here, and it's so crazy. I mean, you talk about like the surrealness of it, and it's like, these aren't the vocal majority, but like seeing other fan bases like pining over Sean Payton or pining over, as crazy as it sounds, Russell Wilson, and being like, oh man, imagine if we had that guy. Think about where our team, and it's just like, oh my god, like think about where this team was 10 months ago. Like all the jokes, like they're gonna get relegated to college football, like all that silly stuff. Like it's like you said, it's wonderful. They beat the Browns, who were like, I mean, we were talking about before the show, one of the scarier teams in my mind left on the schedule for how they matched up with Denver. And I mean, they just straight up handled business, which is just beautiful. Just
It
beautiful.
really is. It really is. Frankie, new segment we're starting today. Your idea. We haven't done Joey's question of the day for a little bit. That's something we haven't done on LTB. So hey, let's bring it to the beginning of this show. Frankie, what is the best all-time Christmas song? And this is your idea, so I'm expecting some grand answer here. You better come with fireworks.
I just want to, let's loosen it up a little bit. Let's get some good debates going, and we'll get to yours because apparently you just hate joy. But I'm gonna go the Peanuts Christmas song. The like Christmas time is here. That one. That's a bop. That's an absolute jam. You probably have no clue what one I'm talking about right now. You're about to listen to that, and you're about to have the most jolly time after the show when you put that on. But that's definitely mine. How about yours, Joey? Even though I already know, tell the people what's wrong with you.
Listen, man, I'm not much of a Christmas music type of person. I think it's too much in my head from when I was driving around as a kid and my mom is blasting the Christmas channel on the radio way early. I can't get into it anymore. The only Christmas I know is Jeezy the Snowman.
Horrible. Well, that's also a classic. Shout out Cheesy. All right, we'll have a better question for next week.
Anyways, Frankie, let's get straight into it. Let's get into the news, man. The recent news, the Broncos news. Brandon Johnson is coming back from IR. How big of a deal is this?
Pretty huge. I mean, we saw him be such a useful weapon for the Broncos in the early part of the season. He had a couple of touchdowns, and I mean, they just need any extra piece they can have in this passing game. He at least has a little bit of juice after the catch, a little bit of a vertical weapon, and if he can stay on the field, he's definitely a positive asset. It seemed like him and Russ had a decent bit of chemistry, so I'm pretty excited to see Brandon Johnson come back.
I am too, man. I think he honestly brings a little bit of a skill set the Broncos don't really have. He's a leaner wide receiver, but he still can play that X role. I think that's kind of what he is. He's an XZ. He's an outside wide receiver. I think he's a really good route runner, though, from what I saw. I think he's a really good route runner. I think he gets open pretty well. And that's something the Broncos can utilize. I mean, Frankie, we were on here this offseason, how impressive it is that despite all these different coaching staffs, he keeps getting his name in the offseason keeps getting brought to the light. Every single offseason, coaches love him, and he gets reps with the ones all the time. If it wasn't for injuries, I would love to know where this guy is right now. Like, where is he in the standings? How many yards does he have? How many catches does he have? But it is a big deal he's coming back. And it's just you know why it's a big deal, though, Frankie, is because Sean Payton does such a good job of utilizing these different skill sets. Like, Lil Jordan Humphrey is a guy that at the beginning of the year just brought up and down from practice squad every single week. Now he has a clear defined role on this offense. and they're maximizing him in it. He's not getting many yards, but damn, is he a really good blocker in the at the wide receiver position? And he's doing a bunch of different stuff like that. He had a catch this last week. Little Jordan Humphrey, like you can use these different type of skill sets is the main point I'm trying to say there.
100%. I mean, you already said it. The versatility they'll be able to have formation wise, having an extra guy to give them the possibility to even go like some 5 wide sets, which I don't really think they'll do that much. But when they've tried to do that this season, it's been Troutman. I think now, if you really need to, you could have like an extra receiver out there like Brandon Johnson. I mean, that's just being able to stretch teams out by being able to go super wide or also super condensed, as we've seen a lot of from Denver this season. It's just good stuff. So, I mean, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes. And then the other part of the news is Russ turned 35 years old. Now, as a Russell Wilson stan, Frankie, and I don't know how this all happened with you. It's very confusing. I'm still trying to figure all of it out. But as a Russell Wilson stan now,
I was abducted and swapped with someone else.
So how many more years on his contract, right? He's turning 35. He's getting up there in age. How much does that concern you going forward?
Yeah. We're riding it until 2025, baby. I'm down until the end of 2025. Like, I don't know. Does it worry me? Yes. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be a massive cliff fall off. I think as we saw this last week, he still has enough athleticism that it's not like he's just like this. It's not like he has to be forced to just sit in the pocket. Still has plenty of arms, still has some ability to move around. I think, the stuff we hear about him and the stuff he preaches, which is Jesus, family, and I'm going to go to the gym a lot and really focus on playing football. I believe him when he says that. So I don't really think it's just going to be like, I don't predict that Russell Wilson is going to like show up in an offseason and just like have this massive fall off barring injury. Yes, I think he'll probably continue to have a gradual regression. We'll see how that kind of goes. But as I think it is right now, and even if it has like, an extra couple percentage drop over the coming years, I don't think it's going to really get to a point where he's not viable.
Okay. Well, interesting. I think that's a very interesting take and one that we're going to have to follow, Frankie. Because you have to think, man, this is really the big concern with me, because I think Russ is playing up to a standard right now where, hey, man, if he was just turning 30 right now, I'm all in. Like, keep the guy for sure. What are we talking about? My main thing is, okay, and this is where I question, I haven't come to a decision on this yet, is with his contract, you're pretty much locked in for the next 2 years at least. After that, contract goes up to $45 million. So is Russell Wilson, what is he looking like at 37? That scares me. That's where it gets a little spooky for me. But anyways, we have this conversation every single week, and I don't want to have to do that again. We have a comment in the chat. J-Dog, what's going on, man?
I hope you have a great day, J-Dog.
Yes. Then the last piece of news, Will Lutz, AFC Special Teams Player of the Month. And I really want to highlight this because where are all the Brett Maher stands? I didn't even know kickers had stands until he was cut.
I thought I might have been a Brett Maher stan. I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. Like, what if this guy? Nah, bro, the trade has been perfect.
Frankie, do you remember what I said about Brett Maher or no?
No, what was it?
Every single week, I said he had a bad case of the Ben Simmons, bro. That was the main issue. Sure, he looks good in the regular season. Sure, all this and that. What's the issue? He got in his own head, man. That freaks me out. You can't go into an off season where you miss, what was it, like 4 PATs, and right off the playoff game, and then just feel secure in your job. If you were going to miss field goals in training camp, you were probably going to get cut. And that was my whole thing. I was like, he freaks me out because what if one of those games happened in a Broncos big game? So I ended up being pretty happy with the trade. Obviously, Will Lutz's numbers have greatly improved. Shout out to Sean Payton for keeping an eye on him and making that trade, because it honestly has helped. Let's get into the main portion of the show, though, Frankie. We are doing, for those that aren't very familiar with the Thursday show, we are doing film review. We go offense and defense. What did we see on the film? On offense, Frankie, what did you see? What did you like? How did they beat the Browns, man?
Where do we want to start? So let's talk about how they attacked them on the ground, because they did it. Sean Payton did an awesome job dialing it up, and the entire offensive line did a great job, and the backs. Like, it was just kind of everybody. I don't want to steal all of those guys. So I guess we'll go with Samaje and Javonte are going to be who I go with. Their usage this week, excellent. We saw Samaje get to be used as a pass protector on that one rep where they got to have the big play. We saw them used on a lot more downhill runs and a lot more gap scheme, which the Browns are playing a lot of really light boxes. I don't know if they have like a designated nose tackle that they feel comfortable playing, but it would appear not, because they just kind of let Shelby Harris and Dalvin I can't think of his last name, line up. Dalvin Tomlinson line up with just like these incredibly wide splits. And I mean, it was just free money. We've seen Lloyd Cushenberry be so good about climbing this year. And I mean, if you give him just a free lane to run up to your linebacker, he's going to win that. He's going to destroy your linebacker, and it's going to be a good run. And then, I mean, so what I want to say about Javonte is just, we've kind of talked about how like this has kind of been his issue throughout his career. I don't want to say, well, yeah, his issue, like, he's not a zone-oriented player. I don't think he really thrives in that zone scheme that's really based on having vision and being able to make those cutbacks. And we're seeing we just saw it in this past game, when they're able to get him in a lot more of these downhill runs where it's just kind of directed, you're going to hit this hole, he just does so much better. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all it is. Sean Payton utilizing his guys properly. Really awesome to see. So I thought we got to see probably the best example of Javonte Williams, where he's able to build up more of a head of steam instead of having to find the lane, where I think sometimes he just has a little bit of issue.
Totally. I definitely think that's a big part of it. And also with P. Ryan, right?
Oh, like, yeah.
Both of these guys, that's the style of runner they are. And then, I think Jaleel is probably a little more versatile. I mean, his vision's insane. But you know what I like to see out of the run game, and one thing that's very noticeable on film, and Frankie, I got to give you credit because you said it on this podcast for a few weeks now, is Russ is really taking command of the offense on the line. How many of those trap plays, feel like, especially in the first half, were Russ making audible at the line, changing the play, taking control, seeing those wide splits and being like, hey, if you're going to just be like, if you're gonna leave your defense like that, we're going to take advantage. Plain and simple. And he checked out of it and he made the right decision over and over again. It's very rare now where I'm seeing them like, Russ, what are you doing? Like, that's rare. That's become a lot more rare than it was last year, man, where it really felt like that almost every single play, where I just had no idea what was going on in his head. Now he seems like a smart football player. Frankie, I want to know if you would also describe Russ in this way. I look at Russ as whatever the tier right above game manager is. Like, he's game manager in the way where he's going to do everything right as far as, he's going to take control of the offense. He's going to audible at the line of scrimmage. He's going to put everyone in position to make a play, but then also has the occasional trick shot, which is what we've seen on these red zone drives over and over again. How many of these are incredible throws? A lot of them are just plain out incredible throws. The one to Troutman, incredible throw last week. The one, what was it? It was one to Sutton the week before. The guy is just having these trick shots. He's building up on top of those. So I think he's a little right now, just a step above game manager. Do you kind of agree with me there?
Oh yeah. He's a game manager with some pepper, man. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, especially when you keep in mind the coach that Sean Payton is. He's never had a rookie quarterback that he's kind of had start an offense. Like, he likes his veteran guys that know what they're doing at the line of scrimmage. And right now that seems like it's Russell Wilson. And like you said, I mean, to build on that pepper point, it's not like the red zone, an incredible part of it, definitely. But I'd say such a big part of it too is what we're seeing in the 2-minute drills before halftime, the 2-minute drills at the end of the game. Like, him in the fourth quarters, like him when you need a conversion, he's been such a big part of like this team moving the ball, making smart decisions. And like, don't get me wrong, yes, you are seeing a couple of like misses, quote unquote, but I'd say they're more so just like coming off a read a little bit quickly. But like, I also don't think like, I don't know. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world for what we're trying to see out of Sean Payton. And I think, again, this is something I was talking about on Saturday. Like, we've seen Russell Wilson, I don't think we have to be worried about, like, this is Russ just who he is now. I think there still is, as we've seen, that Russ that is willing to take shots. I don't think that he, like, obviously, yes, we're not going to see a lot of the over the middle of the field stuff. But, like, he's not, like, just, like, this, like scared quarterback, So I just kind of want to touch on that point where, like, I don't think that part of Russ's game is gone. And we've already, like, seen it so much this season. It's too bad, like, if offensive pass interference yards counted for his passing yards, people probably wouldn't, look down on him so much because they're all like, oh, where are these completions? Where are the yards at? It's like half the time it's like a moon ball that someone just knocks over Sutton or Judy on.
Right. And, because we're having the conversation, Frankie, I do kind of have to bring up the negative. And we were talking a little bit about it
Oh
before
yeah,
the podcast. Man, he's leaving too much out there on these quick throws for my
agreed.
liking right now. That's the one area where it's like, Russ, please. Like, these are your layups. These are the ones that you should be able to get in and out easy. It's always been a struggle with him his entire career. This quick game, this action. I keep sitting there thinking to myself, like, the Broncos need a yards after catch receiver so desperately to make some of these short passes long gains, right? What would also help that is if the quarterback put those out accurately and on time. Javonte Williams, I think 3 weeks in a row now, has had one where it just barely goes through his hands, but because it's on the dirt,
Right.
it's just like, dude, please, because Javonte is one of those guys. What DB wants to see Javonte Williams in open field? What DB wants to tackle that? And he's just not getting it out there. How big of a concern is that for you, man?
Oh yeah, I mean it's 100% a concern. It's one of those things where it's like I don't know necessarily how fixable it is because like the footwork is something you can clean up. Yes, there are some of these easy misses he can definitely like get rid of, but a lot of them are just because again, and this isn't me trying to like do the whole meme Russ thing, but like because he's a shorter quarterback, half the time he has to lob it over a rushing defensive end. Half the time he has to make a little trick shot around these players, which he's gotten a little bit better at this year of like consistently being able to do that. But a lot of times he doesn't have the ability to just stick it straight on a guy because he can't. He literally can't make that throw because of the limitations he has because of his size. So yeah, man, it's definitely a huge concern. Again, I mean, with what we talk about with the receivers in the room and them not really having a lot of these guys that create a lot of yak opportunities outside of like a Marvin Mims, as we're seeing more and more throughout the weeks, like the margin for error is not very big for a lot of these plays that we're talking about where you're trying to get this underneath yardage because they don't have a lot of guys that break tackles. So you need to get the ball on them so you can get that free 4 or 5 yards. Otherwise, if you put it behind them, now we're hoping to get 2 because they're stumbling back to get it. Like it's everything you said. It's completely right. We're like,
or who was it that fumbled this year? Off of it was
might have been Samaje. I think it was Samaje.
It was only like a few weeks ago. It was only like 2 weeks ago, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. I'm forgetting who it was, but ball was low, turned right into helmet on football, fumble going the other way, just stuff like that. And it's just that to me right there is the next evolution to the offense. I honestly think a lot of this training wheels talk you see from online, and I'm one of them. I say that quite frequently, honestly. But I think a lot of that would go away is if we just saw more explosive off of these short passes. Yeah. Then all of a sudden people were like, oh, Russ threw 200 yards, 230 yards this week and had 2 touchdowns, went 100% in the red zone. The narrative on that this is a basic offense for him, a lot of it is stat based. How many people, Frankie, are actually sitting there watching the film? Not a ton. So it really is that way. You need more of those yards in the quick game. Do you have any other offensive notes you want to discuss, Frankie?
I guess I do want to credit Zach Strief. We've talked about him a little bit, but the rookie offensive line coach for the Broncos this year, I mean, he obviously plays a big part in their preparation for the week, and they had to face, are you an MVP candidate in Myles Garrett on the defensive side of the ball, along with Zadarius Smith, who ended up going out in the game, Shelby Harris, Dalvin Tomlinson. Oh my God, I almost forgot his name again. But like,
look, I keep hearing you almost say it.
Like really good defensive front, along with a defensive coach in Jim Schwartz, who sends a lot of crazy pressures at you. And I mean, they did a masterful job. They gave up 1 sack on the day. They almost gave up the no sacks, but then late in the game, they ended up giving up 1. But like, just a really incredible job. And I mean, we're seeing so much development out of every single guy on this offensive line that like, I mean, you just really got to give your hats off to Zach Strief. We talk about it so much in the offseason, like offensive line, one of your most important position roles in the building. And especially when we talk about the fact that you already have Sean Payton, like this is going to sound crazy, but you could argue your offensive line coach is more important in this building than your offensive coordinator. You know, you already have your play caller. You literally just need a guy that can keep developing these guys so they have pieces.
And Frankie, I think you hit the nail on the head there. All I want you to do is explain to the people why offensive line coach is the most important next to your coordinators, even sometimes more important than your coordinators. I think Zach Strief is more important than your offensive coordinator right now for the Denver Broncos. Can you explain to the people why that is so important?
The talent margin between the defensive line and the offensive line in today's league is just ridiculous. Every team has 6-7 guys that can truly get after the quarterback. That might be a little high, maybe like 4 to 7 guys. Every team is, praying they have 2 decent offensive tackles. There just isn't a good enough margin. You're likely going to have, as not trying to be rude, you're likely to have some mismatches on your offensive line week to week, and you need a guy to be able to coach those guys up. You need the guy that can take these undrafted, these 6th round picks and turn them into decent players, because they're just at such a disadvantage from the jump in today's NFL. So, and again, they play such a big part in scheming up against pass protection, scheming up run game assignments, though I'm sure that's mostly Sean Payton, but I'm sure Zach Strief plays a big part in that as well. Just so much of it. Offensive line coach is one of the biggest things.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I did a ton of research I was writing articles about Broncos offensive line coach candidates this offseason. I did a bunch of research on why it is so important. And hey, a lot of the time, these offensive line coaches are given the playbook. They're the ones designing well, how do we protect this? How do we protect this? And then that's their job. They're also out there coaching more players than any other position coach. And then on top of that, you hear offensive linemen talk about this all the time. I was listening to McChesney talk about this, being a Buffs fan. These guys, these offensive linemen, the reason you're seeing this drought come in the NFL of, hey, there's not a lot of good offensive linemen anymore, is because you can't hit in practice. These coaches are out there trying to teach a position where you have to hit to play it. You literally have to touch. You have to go full power. It's the only way you can teach that position. And these guys' jobs are, okay, yes, I understand we can't really hit each other anymore. I still have to teach you to play offensive line somehow, though. So it's just a massive piece to this. Shout out to Colton Cooper's brother's an offensive line coach. Anyways, let's move on to the defense.
Speaking of physicality.
Yeah, right? Talk to me about the defense, Frankie. Wow, how are they getting all these turnovers, man? Is this luck? What is this?
So obviously a little bit of luck got to be factored in, recovering them, forcing them, whatever you want to say. I'd say matchups have really helped, obviously facing Josh Dobbs, who's been one of the more fumble-prone quarterbacks, getting to face DTR, and then, why can't I think who else? PJ Walker, who are both very turnover-prone quarterbacks. Things like that help. But I'd also say it's just the mentality that they play with. It's the physicality they play with, and they have a lot of guys that come up and they make plays. Jaquan McMillan is a guy that will come up and tear the ball out. He'll come up and lay a smack on you. And we'll get into this later. I want to highlight PJ Locke as well, because his game this week was incredible. Obviously, Kareem Jackson missing a few games. PJ Locke did not miss a step. The defense actually, they were playing on fire. The first series, you could tell. They were just flying around the ball. Every time there was a catch in the flat, PJ Locke is on the guy immediately, putting him in the dirt. And it's even it's the incompletions. And we'll get into some of the penalties that they were committing a little later on, but it's just the mentality of if a team wants to, if a quarterback wants to extend a play, if they want to throw a ball in traffic, a tight window throw, if they want to have a running back fight for some extra yards, Denver's going to punish you. And there's going to be teams that think that's dirty, but that's football. You fight for every inch. You don't let guys, make big plays on you. And it's pretty awesome to see they are not going to back down from any of it. They might get a bad penalty on a drive, and then the next drive they're coming right back out and they're smacking you again. So what are your takeaways? And what was your biggest takeaway from the defense?
From the defense, honestly, I don't want to start negative because the defense played so good. The defense was phenomenal, and they've been so much better, man. I can't stress that enough. Vance Joseph, shout out to Vance Joseph, man, being able to be in a really shitty situation and make it good, because that's really what has happened here. Coaching a defense he doesn't know at all. He's never coached really. And then adapting to it, adding his sauce to it, and then going from there. I think Vance Joseph is my biggest positive. He has these guys ready to play, man. And he has these guys that weren't supposed to play prepared to play. I'm seeing very little mental mistakes out of a player like PJ Locke, who came into the season as the team's fourth safety, the fourth option at safety. Jaquan McMillian, the moment he got in, McMillian, man, the nickname. I'm going to TM that. But he came in not skipping a beat. Like, there was no lapses. These guys are ready to play and they know how to play. It's awesome to see, man. The only guy that I've seen really have some lapses is DTY.
Yeah.
Can I bring up this real quick, though? I want to talk about the run defense real quick. How do the Broncos fix this with the run defense, Frankie? They didn't give up a ton of yards this last week, but like efficiency is still low. I think the key, we said the key to the Broncos offense is making shorter passes explosive. I think the key to the defense is getting the run defense closer to the middle than the bottom three. How do the Broncos do that? Is there a solution the Broncos can implement this year?
Probably not. You probably just got to live with the guys you got in house. But honestly, like, it needs to be better, but I also think it's like not the end of the world for this team to just have like a very bad run defense. Like, I'm not going to pretend it's good, but like, I don't know. I think that they can kind of keep surviving through it, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I think if they can kind of keep playing on the script that they have, if they can keep playing games early where they're able to get a bit of a lead, I think especially when you look at the schedule coming up with some of the teams, like, I think that they're just going to kind of keep playing this formula of we have to, hopefully get a lead early and force teams to kind of pass the ball. But
right.
No, I don't think there really is much of a solution for this year. And it's not for any, it's really just because they just haven't really allocated the resources towards the depth at that position. And in today's NFL, you need to have 4 or 5 guys deep on the interior that can play. And they just don't have that right now. They have like 2.5. They have like maybe 3. Like it sucks. And especially like, and another big part of this too is when you're facing a team like the Browns, and we talked about this before, the Browns, the Vikings last week, the Bills and the Chiefs. These are teams with really good offensive lines, like really good interiors as well. So like when you talk about the mismatch, I mean, Joel Bitonio is going to bully the backups on Denver's defensive line just because they are, it's just, it is what it is. As Coop said, you got to keep hoping for the big plays in the defensive game and just keep creating swing plays. That's the best way to do it. And keep having a good red zone defense. Cause I mean, that's been such an impressive thing to me is like this team, once it gets to the red area, like they really lock up.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And you know who's helped in that is Fabian Moreau. And I kind of wanted you to talk about Fabian Moreau and the difference he's made since coming in the lineup. I feel like, I give Vance Joseph a ton of credit for adjusting his scheme and just being a lot more locked in. Another big adjustment was these new guys came in and were better than the players that they took over the spot for. And I think Moreau is one of those. Explain to the people, Frankie, how good has he been?
I mean, like, he's just been solid. And I mean, he's such a perfect example to me of like, when I talk about, you don't necessarily need to spend super big at the corner next to Patrick Surtain. If you have like a good, not even like a good, if you have like a solid corner, which is what I'd say, Fabian Moreau is, I'd say maybe he's been playing a little bit above that, maybe a little below it in the run game and like in things like tackling right away. But like in coverage, he's solid. And like, those are things you can play with. As long as you don't have a straight up liability in your defense. We talk about this all the time. Secondaries are like offensive lines. As long as you don't have a straight up thing they can target, you're fine. And with the pieces that they have with Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons playing at the level he has, we just talked about PJ Locke and Jaquan McMillian, like, and Fabian Moreau has been a big part of that. I don't want to make it sound like Fabian Moreau hasn't been very good, but like he is just like he's been good. He has been quality. He has done his job very well.
So I agree with you, but I will say the difference is we also saw what bad looks like, and that was Damari Mathis, where you actually do like need that solid corner guy. And Fabian Moreau has come in and done that really well, because the opposite was you had Damari Mathis who started the season and he was a complete disaster. And that's what you can't have, because that one corner you can pick on. You can pick on DBs in the NFL. You really can. Like if you watch film and you see someone constantly making lapses in coverage, well, I'm running stuff at you constantly, confusing things. I'm trying to confuse you. If you're just not that great in coverage or you can't turn your head around, kind of like Damari Mathis' issue was, we're going to pick on that as well. So yeah, you're totally right, but you were going to say something.
And then I just wanted to highlight as well, like, I mean, it's the difference between, I think, forcing rookies to play right away and then, having and just throwing a couple extra free agency allocations at those veterans, like I know, and this isn't me trying to be like, oh, this team should get older, but this is me being, there is a lot of value in having just like those solid guys, and this is something that I'm slowly learning myself. Those signings like the Traymon Smiths and the Chris Manhertz and the Fabian Moreau, as we've seen, like they can have a lot of value for your football team. And like, honestly, like there's a lesson to be learned here that there's probably a world where you should be more excited for those signings than maybe the 5th or 6th round pick that we all like are thinking is going to have a super explosive season.
Yes,
year,
you should. I will literally say that you should. I thought some of the dialogue this last offseason on the 7th round center, who I still want to see out there, but like the idea that this guy ever should start at center for the Broncos was mind-boggling to me. I'm like, how it's a handful of 7th round picks that make a roster every single year. There's a handful of 7th round picks, period, that are starting in the NFL. It's all of it's too much. You get in your own head with those late round draft picks. I really don't value those that much. It's good to have them. It's good to fill your roster with, and if you hit a bullseye on the board there, you could get a really big steal. It's just so rare.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And then the other point, or I guess, the last note I've got, I want to talk about just the entire edge room. And we saw a new addition to the edge room, and this is where I want to start. We saw Drew Sanders playing some outside linebacker and rushing the passer a little bit. What were your thoughts? Because he's your boy. You love Drew.
I don't know if I love him as much edge, Frankie. Do you?
He's all right. I mean, it's kind of the same way.
If he's not strong enough to play inside linebacker, he's not going to be strong enough to play on the edge. That's my whole thing. Like I've said it since he's come out of the draft. I'm a huge Drew Sanders fan, but I've always been very consistent with this one point. Where he is lacking the most is play strength. I think a lot of his issues as an inside linebacker will be healed once he adds play strength. We're Devach Lombardi, that offseason peanut butter. He needs some of it, man. That's what's going to come. This next offseason, he's going to have to really hit the weight room and get stronger. You're going to see him because his issue isn't want. I see that all over his film. He's trying to run through and get a pass blockers. He's an aggressive player. He's an aggressive tackler, honestly, too. When he gets a chance to really hit somebody, he really hits them. It's not consistent enough because he's not strong enough. Really, he's getting pushed around. So if he's not strong enough to play inside linebacker, he's damn sure not going to be able to play strong enough to be playing at the point of attack. I just don't really understand the idea there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you pretty much said exactly what I was going to say. Needs to just pack on some muscle. I felt the same way seeing him at inside and outside linebacker. But I do also want to say, like, he needs to clean up his tackling as well. Like, it is a big part of, like, yes, he needs to get better, but he tackles high so often. And he's a tall, lanky guy. He needs to be able to get low and kind of out leverage dudes. But a couple more thoughts. Like, one thing I will say I thought was funny, the moves he's choosing to go for, I thought were hilarious. Like, he had a rep against DeJuan Jones where he tried to long arm him. And like DeJuan Jones, for anyone who doesn't know, is the 6'8", like 390-pound tackle rookie for the Browns. And like Drew Sanders is like 230, like 240 soaking wet, maybe. Like didn't move him an inch. It was very funny. I was just like, oh man, Drew, maybe go for something else next time. I don't know. That's not the go-to. That's not the go-to here. But yeah, very interesting to see. It was all right, but yeah, they can't really put him at inside linebacker right now just because of the tackling issues. But, and then the last part I wanted to say about Drew was, for anyone needing a little bit of optimism on the other side for the Browns, we were watching Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah play incredibly, and they're not, a 1-for-1 match, but he is also a very undersized position switched inside linebacker that when he came into the league had some rough missed tackles and still does to this day, and has slowly gotten better at that throughout his career. So there is a path for Drew Sanders. This isn't like, it's not over. There's plenty of and he's playing fine. This isn't me trying to even make it sound like but like there still is like linebacker is another one of those positions where like it takes time. It takes time to improve. It's a position that has a lot of physicality and there's a lot you have to learn to it.
I want to highlight this real quick. Pause in the chat. He says, hit the like button. Yes, please. Guys, please, if you're watching this right now, hit the like button, show support. We're doing this 5 days a week. Broncos podcast. We have Buff podcast. We have a Frankie Films breakdown come out, film review. If you guys want to see why Samaje Perine is just playing so good for the Broncos, literally see it. Go through Frankie's brain, see it. Please like, support. Word of mouth is the best way to spread podcasts. Do that as well. So shout out to Paul. He's always in.
Just yell about it.
Yeah.
Go on the streets and just scream it. Just be like, LTB, go up to your neighbors, knock on the door.
Please make flyers. First person that makes a flyer can get on the podcast. And especially if I see it all over.
That's a bold.
If I see it all over the place, the LTB flyers around the neighborhood, you're on. Anyways, let's move on to the Texans a little bit before we sign out, Frankie. How big of a game is this for the Broncos? I mean, it just seems enormous. Every week it just gets more and more enormous. And now we're playing CJ Stroud, who is one of the best rookie quarterbacks I've seen, it feels like. It's getting crazy.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. This is probably the biggest game they've played in years, coming off of the biggest game they've played in years, after the other biggest game they've played in years. I sound like Brandon Perner, after the other biggest game they've played in years. Like, it's just awesome. As you said, CJ Stroud maybe having a better season than Herbert did a couple years ago in 2020, especially when you factor in, like, and this isn't me trying to beat up at all on what the Texans have, but I think Justin Herbert had a pretty decent receiving supporting cast coming out. Not take away either, whatever. CJ Stroud is really good. I'm very excited for the game. It's going to be awesome. I do think one thing that maybe benefits Denver a little bit, it does look like the Texans are hurting a little bit on the injury front, which, find the wood, knock on it everywhere. Like, this team is still doing incredibly well injury wise. And from what it sounds like, the Texans are like, hoping that Tank Dell can play, who is like their big play machine. He's a rookie receiver who's just incredibly talented.
He was practicing today too, Frankie.
Oh, he did end up practicing today.
He did. If I remember correctly, I believe this was shared to me. Okay. Keep talking about it. I will look this up.
So maybe he didn't practice the last couple days and then end up practicing today. But regardless, he is a player that is an explosive weapon. So if he is ending up missing the game, that would be massive. I believe Titus Howard is a guy that was missing. Did Titus Howard miss? Maybe I'm just completely wrong in this entire segment. But I believe the Texans are missing a couple players. And they had, like, in the beginning of the season, we were all, the word was, wow, the Texans have all these injuries at the offensive line and they're still keeping it together. Well, it's kind of falling apart. They're giving up a lot of pressures and a lot of sacks the last few weeks. CJ Stroud is incredible at avoiding pressures and sacks. So this is going to sound like I'm a little scared that there's going to be another one of those big hits because CJ Stroud avoids 3 sacks and then just gets absolutely annihilated by someone. And then everyone keeps calling the Broncos the dirtiest team in history. And I don't really want that, but that could happen this week because the Texans give up a lot of pressure and CJ Stroud likes to avoid pressure. And I mean, the Broncos don't like to mess around with quarterbacks. They like to run around on pressure that much.
No, they do not.
It's going to be an epic game.
It's going to be so fun. And to clear up the injury report, they do have a lot of names on here. But Thursday, so Tank Dell was limited participant. George Fant was a DNP up until this, and now he's a full participant. The 2 that were DNPs were Sheldon Rankins and Dalton Schultz, both which of our starters. So, yeah, still a big deal. Still a big deal. And for such a big game, you want all of your players in there. You don't want anybody out, man. Nobody at all. But since Frankie, do you have anything to say before we sign out here, man?
Nothing really. Just
let the people know where to find your film review.
Frankie's film. Go on LTB. Go watch it. It's right over. It's right. I don't have a cool button. That'd be pretty sick if we did. If I could just be like, boom, we'll get there. Go watch the video. It's over on the LTB channel. Go watch it. Follow me on Twitter, Frankie's Film, and yeah, follow the channels and everything. Joey, your stuff.
There we go. All right,
well,
Frankie. Have a great day, man. Everybody, have a great day. Love you all. Go Broncos. We are streaking. Let's go.